hell out of my brain.
Get out of there. We got Batman things to talk about.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
All weapons! Now! Charge the lightning field.
Record. That was very original.
Record?
It's accurate. It's done. I don't think that's.
Is it the Illuminati versus podcast? Is that what?
Yeah, it's Bigfoot and Dispatch Ajax closer than you think.
Krampus versus Dispatch Ajax.
We'd like to give a warning up front. This podcast is best enjoyed with at least 3 alcoholic beverages of your choice.
And one of ours.
That was actually sort of a paraphrasing, a warning from a movie by Jason Trost, because I went down a Tubi hole.
Ah, the Tubi holes.
Which would just be a tube, I guess. Jason Trost makes movies that are relatively similar to our topic today.
I don't know who this is.
Well, he did one called The FP. He did All Superheroes Must Die. The one I was watching is really douchey.
Oh, I know. Okay.
Right.
I got
You're aware.
this. I'm aware.
Yeah, he's just this California upper middle class kid who had access to the movie industry and made a bunch of douchey movies. But I don't necessarily think they're mean-spirited. Well, anyway, you can judge for yourself. It's a lot of weird cultural appropriation and white people using a lot of black patois. I don't know.
Patois.
It's very, very white Californian. So caution to anyone. Yeah.
Tubular.
No, I wish it was that innocent.
Sounds pretty bodacious to me, dude.
A lot of the C word, a lot of the use of the word twat, which surprised me.
Huh.
Interesting.
Interesting. The C word came up in the films of this particular gentleman we'll be speaking of soon.
The naval vessel, the C word.
Uh-huh.
One of our proudest exploratory naval vessels.
All aboard the USS Cunt.
C word and beyond.
We're going down in the depth with this cunt.
Plumbing the depths of the C word.
It's more of a submersible, really, if you're doing it right.
You spent a lot of time lower decks, huh?
If you really get adventurous, you can go on the poop deck.
Whoa! Yeah, just make sure that you spend most of your time below C deck, because that's where the C word really comes to life. So, welcome to Dispatch Ajax. I'm Skip.
I'm Jake.
Yeah, so today we're talking about something really weird. It's going to be short and bitter, but I went down a Tubi hole, not a tube, just a tube. And
not a boob tube?
If you were aware, fair audience, of how Tubi's algorithm works, it's actually pretty spot on for recommendations during its autoplay. Especially if you're into like weird, geeky, quirky shit. It definitely sort of like, well, at least it used to. It might have gotten worse recently. Essentially, I don't want to say AI, but automated Tubi algorithm eventually, while I was doing other things, in fact, I think I had left the house and come back, stumbled across a film by a director named, and this is his legal name, BC-14.
Well, technically it's not, but we'll get to it.
Well, I read a lot of that too. That is his handle, and that's what he goes by. Do not confuse that with the black-run indie film company out of New York, BC-14, The Numbers. We're talking about BC-14, 14 spelled out.
Correct.
The man who has written and directed things you wouldn't possibly imagine.
Which one did it bring you? Did the magic service delight your eyes with?
I believe it was Van Helsing.
I believe it was, yes.
Yeah. Who was in that movie somehow a weird colonial marine?
Well, we'll get into that.
I know you did some research. I did a little bit of research. Most of my work was the dirty work, watching the things, which I do not recommend necessarily, though reviews are mixed as far as reaction from audiences. So let's see, what do you got? What did you find?
Okay, so BC-14 is an American screenwriter, novelist, film director, film editor, and actor. Now, BC-14 is just one of his names. I believe that his legal name might be BC Furtney, F-U-R-T-N-E-Y.
Yes, that seems to be the consensus.
but he has also gone under other pen names, such as Christopher Maitland, which is an homage to the Peter Cushing character in 1965's The Skull.
True.
But he has also gone other names like Denise Schoolner. BC, he is, I believe, from Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh to be exact. And he's been a horror fan seemingly all of his life. I think he said he's wanted to be a horror guy. He started out making short films that went to festival circuit and won some contests.
Yes, in fact, I'd like to interject just for a second, because two of the things that he won contests for was he's the only director that has been included in both of Fangoria's Blood Drive releases, which were indie produced and then backed financially by Rob Zombie and Fangoria. One of which, the first one he's on, the original Blood Drive, also features a film of a guy that I know who lives here, who directed Song of the Dead. His name is Chip. And so there was a lot of confusion when I first moved here. A lot of people thought that I was him, because I wanted to make a zombie movie when I first moved here, and he was already doing it, and we have very similar names. So I know that guy. I've known him for many years now, actually. He did some work with me, actually. But there is a local tie to that. So I understand the level of type of film that he would have started out creating.
Yeah. Like most budding filmmakers, he began making short films. He's written multiple novels. Tend to be of a horror variety, although he does enjoy noir elements in both of his films and his written work. He has also written for the This Is Horror magazine. He ran an article called Horror of Babylon. Get it? I read some of those. That's a thing that I did. So now, again, he started out, as most normal working directors do, a lot of low budget indie fare, some, live action, stuff like New Terminal Hotel and things. But your standard horror fare. But I think he was kind of looking for some steady work. And then he got into some kids' films. He was doing Pup Scouts and Trolled and Wee Dragons and Penguin Rescue. Lots of kid stuff, which was outside of what he was really interested in, at least from interviews that I have read and listened to. But at this time in his life, him and his wife were having kids, and he wanted he thought it was interesting to make something that could be enjoyed with the whole family at home. But then he was approached by a producer that he knew, supposedly a producer from Maui is how he's described. We will get into this. There is very little information about any of the people that BC-14 works with. The production companies, if you go to a Ruthless production, one of the studios that's distributed and produced a lot of his stuff, they have no website. I can find no address. I do not know how these things function.
Seems legitimate.
Maybe there's a secret Rolodex in Hollywood that you can figure out all of the production info. But otherwise, any standard simple Google search without paying for IMDb Plus or whatever, can't find anything. But he was offered a new venture. This was going to take him far away from the kids' fare that he'd been doing. It was adult animation and supposedly had no rules. He could do whatever he wanted within the bounds what he was given. And I believe this began with the first film I saw, 2020's Trump versus the Illuminati.
Oh, boy. I think I may have started that at some point and then just abandoned it immediately. Or fallen asleep in the state in which led me to put that movie on in the first place.
Now, I'm not going to get necessarily into Trump versus the Illuminati. I would like to journey into the future, dear listeners, to a film a couple years after that called Bigfoot versus Krampus.
Oh, good.
Is the army mobilizing?
Drone Ship 4 is picking up a flurry of activity on one of the Kerguelen substars board.
This doesn't look good.
I'll show you, Tin Man. These odds ain't looking so hot. And this Sasquatch ain't going down with the ship.
Let me just read this for you. With Christmas time approaching and the Illuminati forces on the retreat, the Allies are in high spirits. Space roughneck Van Helsing considers taking his relationship with Allied Forces leader Princess Kali to the next level. Unfortunately, Satan is set to ruin the moment. From the depths of hell,
Every time.
the wicked Lord of Darkness summons the demon spirit of Christmas, Krampus, to wreak havoc on the living. Upon hearing the news, the clone of magician Alistair Crowley joins forces with the reptilian form of General Stalin and the Illuminati to mount a Christmas Eve attack on the Allies, forcing Van Helsing and Kali to take drastic action. With help from the rowdy space rogue Bigfoot, that's how it's written. I'm going to say it exactly how it's written. The Allied forces bait a syndicate of monsters to help take down the fiendish Krampus and restore peace to the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound bat fucking shit and insane to you? Because it should.
Yep.
It's completely out there.
Also, great grasp on history. The magician, Alistair Crowley, is quite a generous assessment, by the way.
Yeah, I think in an interview, someone asked him about his version of Alistair Crowley, and he said he wanted to just take the most far-out, wild aspects, both of the quote-unquote magical abilities and the sexual deviances.
Yeah, the things that made him an asshole and a rapist. Yeah.
And, turn them up to a 10. Yeah, let's put that out there. Now, you might be asking yourself, what? How?
Yes, fair. That seems like a quote.
Huh?
Okay.
How this is done, apparently, he said that it started with Bigfoot versus the Illuminati, which came out after Trump versus the Illuminati, that the producer came to him with outlandish premise, and he tried it. He said he lets the characters take the stage, the mix of horror, noir, and sci-fi.
Okay.
And he was given, again, no rules, except for a few things the producer wanted in there. One...
So a few rules.
Most of the films are a versus. So a lot of the stuff he's done, Trump versus the Illuminati, Bigfoot versus the Illuminati, Bigfoot versus Megalodon, Bigfoot versus Krampus, Bigfoot versus Megalodon 2, Bigfoot versus Megalodon Resurrection. The verses were a staple and needed to be in the film. Apparently BC-14 pushed back on some of that because in a lot of these characters did not actually fight, sometimes never even interacted.
Yep.
So he didn't feel that comfortable with that aspect, and through later iterations wanted a big fight piece spectacle at the end to give a film a resolution. Because if you watch a lot of these, they just kind of trail off.
Yes, they just kind of meander into not being on anymore.
Yes, the plot dwindles and then the credits come up.
Yep.
But he was given license to pack every crazy thing he could think of, and he took that, those reins by the teeth, and just threw in everything he could, because he had been cooped up making kids' films for so long, so he was just throwing crazy shit at the wall. And he was able to do this because he wasn't using actors or sets or those other things that live action films do, because these are all CGI animated films that apparently are made with Unreal Engine, the video game tool.
Makes sense.
Although BC said he doesn't really know. He's not really involved in that. Apparently it all goes through the producer, and then BC gets the animation in blocks that he cuts from that, and then kind of works the dialogue into those scenes.
Ah, the Marvel method.
Yeah, and he's apparently asked for some specific things, like the getting actual fights at the end of films put in, but mostly he's just kind of given a title and some CGI story boundaries, and then kind of runs with that. And so these films tend to be the Unreal Engine character bits. Almost nobody talks. You'll get a lot of these things where people are wearing masks or helmets or are giant grotesque beasts that don't really move their mouth, and then they're intercut with whatever stock footage that the production company has licensed, and they just kind of construct a narrative out of that tends to be as off the wall as you can think.
Oh yeah, you can tell. I mean, there's a reason, and I'm sure we'll get to this in a second, but there's a reason that people think these are written and or performed by AI, which is a debate, but I don't think is true, and we can sort of prove why.
Correct. Although I do have some questions about some of it.
Mm-hmm.
There is what develops from here is what some might call the BC-14 cinematic universe.
Boy, oh boy.
And it is a long weaving plot between all of these movies. They're all set in a far future, generally space-based, involving Trump, like what's become Chinese clones of Trump in the far future that are helping, quote, the allies against the Illuminati, which are these aliens, kind of gray-ish, kind of a mix between grays and reptilians. And they are also influenced by Satan, exactly what you think, who likes to work with Krampus, a version of Krampus that you can think, but imagine. All right, Skip.
Yep.
Here's a deep cut. Do you remember Plo Koon, the Jedi?
Yeah.
How would you describe Plo Koon?
If I'm remembering the right one, is he the one with the yellow lightsaber?
I don't remember what his Let's see. Lightsaber color is yellow. You are correct, sir.
He seems like a Voyager also ran alien.
Plo Koon was one of those interesting Star Wars prequel characters because he had a breathing mask and like cybernetic eyes. And it's like, oh, this guy looks interesting. I sure hope I get to see and find out more about him. Nope. Fucks off. But Krampus reminds me of him because he has the same kind of gas mask a lot of times. Why?
Of course, like Krampus famously does.
I think just so they don't have to, again, animate the mouth.
Yep.
Bigfoot seems to be the one who's talking the most. And this is, imagine a version of Bigfoot, but he has a bunch of spiky teeth. But they wanted the character to kind of sound like Fat Albert. So he's like, hey, I'm Bigfoot. I want to go fuck some ladies. And that's kind of stuff he says. Because that's funny.
In quotes.
And he pairs up a lot of times with Jack Van Helsing, who's a long descendant clone from, yes, the Bram Stoker Van Helsing. Is he fighting any vampires in any of these? No. It's just a name that I guess sounded fun, so they went with that. There's a lot of blending of other things. There's Osiris and Anubis that are kind of blended into one god being that they mess with.
They talk about the Anunnaki a lot, too, in those
The Anunnaki come up again. The Anunnaki, the Illuminati, lots of buzzwords. I think this is how it kind of probably got into my feed originally.
Mm-hmm. It's a word cloud.
Yeah.
Essentially, he's making films with word clouds.
Yeah.
The sort of cyber version of Mad Libs.
It's special. So there's very little out there on BC-14. I found that there was somebody, apparently on Reddit, like a guy and his friend, they watched all 30 plus BC-14 films and made a podcast about it. I don't think that's still extant. No. I could not find it archived anywhere.
No, in fact, it's been taken down from SoundCloud and everywhere else that I could find.
Yes. Yeah. I saw that BC-14 got on Reddit a few times and interacted with people asking about his universe.
I saw that.
And then deleted his account.
I actually have that up right now. This is how bizarre that is. Somebody posted on Reddit, can someone please explain BC-14 to me? And then he started talking about how it feels like AI generated. He really wants to like it. He kind of breaks down exactly what we just said. Points out that a lot of the dialogue is ADR, which I'm sure it is. Though there are,
well, it has to be. It's all like CGI.
Well, I mean, fair, but it seems like additional dialogue recording. So, like, not just voiced over. They went in later when they got whatever animation back, and then added more dialogue to try and make the narrative make sense, I guess, though it never does. And so his final statement here is, well, he says, so my question is BC-14 an AI, or is this some elaborate multi-year performance art piece that just went way over my head? And then the first response, this was 2 years ago, from a deleted account. Not AI, maybe the latter, though going over anyone's head wasn't the intention. Bigfoot's sci-fi universe is meant to have fun, okay? You may find lots of Easter eggs in the dialogue. Best served with a beverage of your choice and not taken too seriously. Thanks for watching, BC. So, he did create a Reddit account, go on here to comment, and then deleted his account.
Yeah.
The thread is full of people going, oh, he deleted his account, shit.
If you scroll down, also apparently his wife created an account to comment on some of that as well. This is Jennifer-14.
Jennifer-14, yeah.
Is also in many of his films.
Which is funny, because that was actually her just AOL Instant Messenger handle. What a coincidence that she married a guy named 14.
Yeah. So in the more recent time, now he's begun to expand. So BC-14 doesn't just love his CGI slop, wild, crazy future battles like with time travel and cybernetic giant megalodons and fighting for Christmas versus Satan. And oh god, I saw like Lucifer's in a wheelchair because the Kennedys
Yes.
shot him.
Apparently
something.
that's not officially in canon. Supposedly he brought that up in a podcast interview, but it's not officially in canon.
This world. If you do want a little more complete sense of this cinematic universe, the podcast Horror for the Holidays, a podcast where a couple guys, they go through holiday-themed horror films.
Oh, gee.
They did one on Krampus versus Bigfoot, and then they did an addendum called Stocking Stuffers Episode 37 into the BC-14 universe, where one of the hosts, bless his soul, he watched and put together the cobbled timeline of like 15 of these films and how they flow from one into the other and how the story evolves.
Question mark?
But if you'd like to know how some of this stuff comes together, it is that. Apparently, BC has said that he's not a big Trump guy and that he's, quote, calling it down the middle.
Oh, Jesus.
But I believe that he and his producer found, oh, this is what sells. When he put out Trump versus the Illuminati, it got written up in the New York Times.
Yeah.
It made mainstream circles. They're like, oh, okay, this is good. We can roll with this. And so he has gone on to do what have been titled documentaries. I suppose he's mostly saying facts in these. I've watched, honestly, some of a couple to kind of get a flavor of what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He has multiple Trump ones, From Power to Prison, The Trump Story, Part 1 and 2, Mega Trump, a few different things. He also has what is, I'd say, has a symbiotic relationship with the Versus films. And this is pairing a character from fiction and a character of salacious nature from our history. So this is Bundy and the Wolfman, closer than we think. A Dahmer and Frankenstein, closer than we think.
Mm-hmm.
There are Manson and Dracula, closer than we think. It's using stock footage. It is utilizing footage databases and pictures and I guess trying to see how these two are similar. I don't really know if, I guess, what are the bounds of a documentary?
Yeah, that's a problem.
It feels more like Tubi clickbait than anything, which, hey, should I knock the man for his hustle? You know, I mean, it's working for him.
We can't argue with the hustle, man. Is it art? If that's the case, that's a debate to be had.
That's a good question. When I was working on this episode and then watching some of the stuff and then thinking about it, my first inclination, is the same thing I thought after I first watched Trump versus Illuminati some 6 years ago. It's like, oh, ugh, this is weird and ridiculous. And is it AI doing this? A lot of the credits on these films, the actors, the storyboardists, people like this, they've only worked on these films.
Yep.
That's it. And then if you look them up, I can't find much of anything about most of these actors. And you're like, well, are they real people?
Right. I mean, that is a genuine question.
I don't know. But I was thinking about this. And my first inclination is like a bit of apprehension, a bit of like, oh, this is some bad movie schlock that maybe goes for it a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's just trying to be out there and wild for wild's sake and for the Tubi clicks. But then I was thinking that one, this doesn't really seem to be BC-14's. He is the writer, director, editor, actor, and a lot of this stuff. But at least from what he says, he said this producer from Maui approached him with these things and kind of gave him like, hey, do something about Trump and the Illuminati and space and just go wild. And he started writing these things and making them, and he's continued on. I believe this gentleman might be Randall Finnings. He seems to be the only producer that is with most of this, at least all of the Versus universe. He seems to be the guy there. I think he was the one who pushed all of this and set this in motion. And he is the man behind the curtain, pulling all of these strings. So maybe this should be the Finnings universe. Because I think he's the guy who wanted this done. And BC is like, I'm looking for work. It's a steady gig. I just write a bunch of wild stuff. The quality is certainly debatable. Is he having fun doing bonkers things, writing particularly poor dialogue, unfunny scenes, certainly uninteresting characters and action, but combining them all into a hodgepodge of what the fuck? And
Right.
this is weird.
That just happened.
Can I fault him for that? Should I? Part of it's kind of the American dream, you know?
Yeah.
He falls into this. He's just riding this wave, and it keeps on pushing along. He keeps making more movies.
Yeah, the producer you're referring to kind of reminds me of like the Soul Kinds or something. They had this idea of what the kind of slop they wanted to put out. It feels very canon coded, but in the modern digital age.
Yeah, and I think going through these other asylum adjacent or sub asylum, Ruthless Productions or Wow Now Entertainment, or MVD Shop. These companies who are putting this stuff out, and I'm guessing it's pretty cheap to make.
Well, it has to be.
It looks pretty cheap to make, and there's a lot of reusing of footage. I don't know how long it takes some of these people to make their Unreal Engine things, especially since they don't have to work hard on mouths, eyes,
right,
anything looking or feeling real.
And a lot of the movements of the characters are very obviously templates that have been set up ahead of time, probably, that are available for free or even maybe with a charge or whatever. But you can download these templates that will make characters walk and move in a certain way. I mean, because I don't know if you noticed any of the stuff in those films, but all of the Space Marines or whatever, they walk with a swagger.
There's a bounce,
yeah,
that comes from the knees to the hips to the shoulders that isn't normal human machinations,
unless it's performative. And it's weird because every human character uses the same swagger, and also Bigfoot.
And Bigfoot's a part of it.
Well, he's a big part of it.
He is. If we were to name the main character, it would be Bigfoot. Bigfoot is the through line through a lot of this.
Yeah, he's not in everything, but he's in most of them. Sometimes it's just at the end. The first one I watched literally ends with Bigfoot going, I heard noises or whatever. And then he's like, I better go investigate. And then shows his weird swagger as he walks from some other part of a different movie, I guess. And then it ends.
It's so weird. Yeah, all of these films begin in media res, and then they just kind of end, and then another film starts, but there's never connecting material.
Do you think at this point, with the volume and number of films that they're putting out, do you think that is designed specifically for streaming now? Because they know it's going to autoplay. And so it's almost like a soap opera by default.
Yeah. No, that's probably a good idea to point out. I think that's definitely a part of it. I think also not having to write an intro or beginning or an end, really.
Right.
You just roll with your ideas and just drop them wherever you like.
Yeah, I mean, is this not maybe the new model for streaming content, where it's we're keeping the audience engaged by not really giving you a 3-act story structure necessarily, but sort of pulling the soap opera playbook, flowing one into the other with brief recap as your first act, and then no actual denouement, but instead a pseudo to be continued. The people behind this, money-wise and production-wise, I feel like maybe they believe they're getting in on a ground floor of another hustle. Not just the buzzword appeal, and not just with the versus stuff and all that, which works with certain algorithms or whatever. They're only basically on Tubi, and they know that Tubi has an algorithm about what to play next. Maybe they think they're playing into that as an inroad that gives them a leg up, to use a lot of metaphors, all mixed together in a blender there. Do you think that that's their angle here? Do you get that impression?
I don't know if that's how they started, but I think as the snowball has gained momentum, I think it fits nicely in their niche.
Right. Well, like you said, there's a difference between BC-14 specifically and some of the money that comes in and the producer that he has to sort of go through. So is that part on BC-14, or is that, you think, a design by, or at least maybe a happy accident by the higher-ups that finance it?
What, the structure or
Yeah.
the ideas?
No, he comes up with the ideas, but the structure, the idea of exploiting the algorithm of Tubi and things like that. I think that's probably right.
One that's had to come from somewhere. I'd be really fascinated if we could get a genesis point for starting this versus universe and
Yeah.
what the long-term play was. I mean, was this a passion thing from this producer? It's like, hey, I want you to make this, just do whatever you want, just as long as it's versus. I want Trump and aliens in there and, just go wild after that. And then BC was like, hey, I can write this out in an afternoon. I got this gig. And,
Yeah.
then it just became what he does.
Yeah, the impression I get just from looking at the timeline and the output, it is easy to think that it's AI generated writing and or voiceover, because that's what it feels like, no matter how old these are. But, I mean, ChatGPT didn't come out until late 2022. So a lot of these movies predate that. So unless he figured out how to do an AI model way beforehand, I doubt that's the case.
BC-14 is actually a pseudonym for John Titor, and this is what he came back in time for.
This is what John Titor came back in time for. Not to save humanity, but to make a bunch of schlocky, shitty direct-to-video streaming bullshit animated by somebody else.
What if this was the future mythology of civilization 200 some years in the future?
So John Titor is a future Ken Burns trying to point out how bullshit our media consumption is. Okay. Hey, why not? That's more plausible than a lot of the shit that happens in these movies. All right. I guarantee you it's not, at least at first, straight up AI writing. You go back to his filmography, it's starting in like 2018. He's writing, 10 movies a year. It's fucking crazy, the output. But after, quote, AI, and we've talked about this a lot, becomes a thing, his output increases almost exponentially. So he claimed, in the very few times he's talked about any of it, that he writes all of it. Sure. And I do buy that if the case is that he puts this stuff together, they animate it, and then he has to rewrite shit around it. Okay. That makes more sense. And also is why it sounds like what we think of as AI generated. It is incoherent, and it is just desperately trying to do the Marvel method with bad animation and a horrible output that he has to then retroactively save. It would make sense if he is using AI now. He's putting out a fuck ton of stuff now per year. At least was until relatively recently.
He certainly didn't start out this way.
No.
But whether the producer or BC-14 himself, whether they've started it already, it will happen in the future. If I was the producer, do I need to hire BC-14? Could I license his name and just let AI do it after this?
Right. Is the purpose to make good films, or is the purpose of a filmmaker to stay relevant and make money? In that sense, now you're in, is it Aronofsky that's been doing that AI bullshit?
Yeah, he's the one who's trying to make his AI short films, I believe, about
it's the Revolutionary War.
Whatever. Yeah.
I sadly saw a trailer the other day, and then it turned out it was a trailer for the new season of Outlander. And I was like, oh, what? What? What is going on?
I didn't know they were still making Outlander.
The last season. That's the trailer I saw. And I was like, oh, really? Oh, so that's real. And with people I like behind it. Weird. Because it feels like an AI slop bullshit. And I would like to say it is pretty easy to pick out AI slop in videos. I know a lot of people get duped. A lot of uncles. And a lot of...
We're uncles.
Well, we're unk now, I guess, sure. But a lot of, even our uncles and our fucking in-laws or whatever are fooled by AI. With my former in-law, one time, I had to explain in a long argument, not argument, but a long dissertation, I guess. He was watching a Chiefs game, and the score didn't reflect the final score. And I had to explain that it was because he was watching a video game simulation of the full game that had come out the same day that he thought was live gameplay.
What? He couldn't tell the difference?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if we talk about real world stuff, the use of AI generated disinfo, that is what will dominate after that. The next election cycle, oh, it's going to be everywhere. And it's going to have major ramifications.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of that is subsidized. It doesn't actually have any basis in real economics. So, like, everyone says, oh, it's cheap now and we can replace people with this, yada, yada, yada. That's not true. It can't possibly bear out that way. Most of it is subsidized. Most of that stuff, the actual compute and generation time and cost are actually way more expensive than just having people do it. But right now, money is being jizzed all over them by venture capitalists in a lot of illegal ways, also other companies that have weird circular investment schemes, like with NVIDIA. So I don't think that's going to last as long as people think it is. These movies, though, kind of obscure that, are kind of baffling because they feel like they're AI, but actually they're probably just bad writing based on bad game engine CGI. Today, it might be a little different.
Yeah, it's an interesting oddity.
It's an oddity, that's for sure.
It does seem like that he is aware of what he's making, that he's taking the piss with a lot of things, and he's enjoying just putting wacky stuff out there. But, you know, hey, have fun, get paid. I don't think any of us should
He's making a living.
look at it. Yeah, he writes other things, and he's written books and other shows, and he has live action production stuff that he's doing as well, because I think he actually does have a drive to do something. But when it's all said and done, when BC Fertney or BC 14 or Denise Schoolner or Christopher Maitland, whoever it is, actually gets put in the ground, it is the Finnings versus BC 14 universe is what he will be remembered for.
Right.
If we remember any of this in the far future wastelands.
You know, maybe one of the reasons that he sort of like uses a pseudonym because, you know, at least early on, he wanted to be called something else, so he wasn't directly tied to this stuff specifically, necessarily. But now that pseudonym became more advantageous and more recognizable and became sort of a brand that he could run on, like Asylum or something like that. So yeah, maybe it's going to be one of those like I made a deal with the devil type things, and then it's going to define what he does
for good or ill, you know.
Yeah,
we found it interesting enough to look into and discuss,
because there's a lot of it. There's a lot of that shit out there.
There's a lot of it, and I think if you were with a few friends, I think you put a BC-14 on in the background while you're drinking, you're going to look up and be like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
But in a fun way. He definitely doesn't take any of this seriously.
No.
And I don't think he thinks any of it's high art. I think it's questionable and debatable whether that's a good or bad thing. But he's making a living, he's having a good time, and he's putting out some weird stuff into the universe. I think there's going to be kids who see this, take that in, and then put something, you know, doubling down on that out in the future. And then you got a question like, what's that going to be like?
Right. It's not like it's Ben Shapiro's production company. It's just a buzzword that he's using for that angle. It's not some propagandist bullshit. Especially if you watch that movie, it doesn't have anything really to do with that. It's completely absurd and doesn't really flatter or boost Trump in any way, except in this hilariously cartoonish way. And if he's doing it just for the clicks and for the money, hey, you know, good on you. Making your way in the world, especially in the environment we have today.
Mm-hmm. And if he's doing it for the love of the game, hey, have at it, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, you and Scorsese might not get along, but I get it. Making your way in the world today
takes everything you've got.
To quote the theme song.
Sha-na-na-na.
Yeah, well, okay, sure, yeah. God, the show's our age. Yeah, essentially that's it. He's a weird dude who makes weird stuff. And as generic and as overarchingly blanketed as that sounds, it's actually pretty accurate. Even to his admission, he's just a guy who likes weird things and puts in weird stuff in movies and makes weird movies. Okay. All right. I guess that's it.
Yeah.
What else is there about it?
Okay, so he mentioned 3 comics on this particular interview that he had on his shelf that he was getting ready to read.
Okay.
Quick take. Savage Sword of Conan.
Ooh.
Tomb of Dracula.
Nice.
And Shadow Force.
The Image comics?
No, the DC Shadow Force.
I don't remember Shadow Force. I was thinking Shadow Hawk. Shadow Force. I know Tomb of Dracula, obviously.
No, Night Force.
Oh, the sort of pseudo-horror.
Yeah, Night Force. I think I wrote it down wrong. If you want, we could just retake that.
Wow, is he a product of the 80s and 90s, just like us? Uh,
Yeah. He's just a few years older than us. Yeah, but I mean, at least, hey, it's a deep cut.
yeah, why not?
I mean, I'm not a huge Night Force guy, but whatever.
No, not very many people were. That's why it does not exist anymore. I do remember that, though. I remember thinking it was like a fun DC going into, at that time, was Marvel territory with occult. Well, I guess they were both doing it. Occult, super powered stuff. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it ran super long. It was just 14 issues, so I think he had the omnibus on the shelf that he talked about.
It is funny, though, that he takes inspiration from comics that are very specifically just horror fantasy comics.
He seems to be a total horror head.
Right.
If you see all of the stuff, his passion projects seem to be, horror films and horror books and horror articles. That's what he's into. You just kind of get sucked into something else that pays the bills.
It's not for us to judge him for that. We can individually and sort of in a vacuum criticize the films and even overarchingly criticize the process in which they were made and the money behind it and all that. We can definitely criticize that, but it's really hard for us to fault a guy for getting a steady job, doing what he likes to do. Even if he doesn't have the luxury of being like a Scorsese or somebody like that who could just make whatever he wants when he wants.
And even if he's not like a Neil Breen or one of those cult filmmakers who's just making, weird passion projects, he's a working guy. He's putting in the work. He's getting paid. Mm-hmm. He's making some wild stuff that I think, again, with a few choice beverages, can be enjoyed as it's meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Well,
have at it.
I've seen his movies pop up on mostly Tubi, but whatever technique they're using apparently works. And for good or ill, he's carving his way out and making himself relevant and making a living. Good on him, I guess.
And I would guess we're going to see more of that in the future as people see this work.
And I don't think his work is as cynical as Asylum is.
Yeah, he's definitely he's carving his own path, which is why it sticks out.
I think he's laughing the whole way to the bank, that guy. Honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good on him. They're not going to say, I love this shit, because most of it is pretty much unwatchable, but hey.
Yeah.
Have
at it. Do your thing. Enjoy in moderation, audience.
Yeah, please do. And always with a sponsor.
Do not watch BC-14s by yourself.
Please have a moderator or a spotter. Because they require heavy drugs and or alcohol.
Yeah.
So
check your carabiner. Make sure your lifeline is fully secured.
Make sure you've written a letter to your friends and family if you don't make it out.
If I'm not done with this BC-14 film, just wait longer.
Make another.
We hope you've enjoyed. Go check out a BC-14 film for yourself. Draw your own conclusions.
Do your own research.
With your own Unreal Engine of Toonami Tom and...
Toonami Tom.
That's what I thought of, whenever I watched those. It's just Toonami Tom is banging other Toonami Tom-lets and hanging out with Bigfoot.
That's about right.
I'd say maybe the Toonami Tom might be a better animated, but...
What was that one Adult Swim show that was extremely absurdist? It was like some dude in the desert.
So you use your powers to save people?
Powers are for the weak. I have no powers. I mean, unless you count the power to blow minds.
It felt exactly like that. I'm trying to remember what it was called. That's what I should have looked up.
Okay, yeah. We'd like to thank you all for, again, go see a BC-14 film for yourself. But while you're doing that, if you wouldn't mind sharing, subscribing. Rate us 5 Van Helsings on the podcast app of your choice.
Didn't go
Ideally,
Bigfoot?
Apple. You know what? I kind of hate the Bigfoot.
Yeah, his Bigfoot is a douchebag.
Yeah, I hate this cinematic version of Bigfoot. Van Helsing's a douchebag too. All of his characters are pieces of shit. That's another thing that we could have talked about, but that's neither here nor there. Again, thank you all for sticking around, checking out a weird cinematic niche that maybe you weren't aware of before. Come back and see what we bring for you next time. But until they get lost in the deep end against Krampus, Lucifer, Satan, Anubis, Osiris, Time Travel, Bigfoot, Van Helsing, Princess Kalia, and Tickles the Clown. That's all I could think of off the top of my head, which is kind of sick when you think about it. Skip, what should they do?
Well, if they just happen to be in the audience when Tickles the Clown and Trump face off in a half-filled swimming pool, I would suggest that they pay their tabs, make sure they have...
Tickle the hot,
Kumate. Until then, make sure they have paid their tabs, cleaned up after themselves in some sort of reasonable degree, make sure they have tipped their bartenders, their wait staff, their KJs, their DJs, their podcasters, and supported the local comic shops and retailers. From Dispatch Ajax, we would like to say, no matter where you go, there you are. Thank you, and good night.
Hey, hey.